Hi, and I hope you're doing well today. Welcome to week 2 of our course. Now, so far we covered some basic aspects in Python, and today I wanted to show you one of the more popular tools we use to write Python code. We already saw Trinket as part of our assignments from last week, which we will continue to use today as well. I also demonstrated last week writing code using idle. Today, though, I will show you how to use yet another tool, and this one is called VS Code. It's made by Microsoft, and it is a free and open source application. Now, the VS in VS Code stands for Visual Studio. Microsoft does make another development application called Visual Studio, so just Visual Studio without the word code in the name. So please don't get confused by the two. They both have the same logo, but use different colors. VS Code has a blue icon color, while Visual Studio is purple. Now, VS Code is a fully integrated development environment, or IDE, and it has so many features and functionality. So today, my goal is to show you how to use this tool, and the more you use it, the more you will become comfortable with it. Now, of course, there is a learning curve associated with the application, and hopefully after this class, you will have a good head start. Now, I will also cover the week 2 material, as well as go over last week's extra credit quiz. I will also show you some code examples that pertain to formatting outputs from the print function, as well as talk a little bit about the input function. And of course, I will go over the weekly assignments. So let's get started. Alright, this is our week 2 module, and here's the breakdown. And the week always starts from Monday and runs through Sunday. And the topic for, or the topics for this week are going to be the inputs, so we're going to be learning about the input function, and then output, so we could learn about formatting the output from the print function. And then we're going to be learning about VS Code as well. All right, and that typical breakdown, we have an overview section, we have an assignment section, and then we have a resource section. All right, now before I get into the week 2, I want to go back to our week 1 and specifically the extra credit quiz. So if you remember from last week, I mentioned that I will be going over the extra credit quizzes, so you can, basically learn from them and also test your knowledge as well. So I'm going to open that up. I'm going to take the quiz. Again, you get 2 attempts, and there are 5 questions. It's extra credit, so basically any question that you get, you will earn points for it. There are 5 questions, and again, the default is 0 points, but for every question you get right, you will get a point for a maximum of 5 points for every extra credit quiz. So let me continue that. Alright, so the first question is, who developed Python? Okay, now we kind of learned last week that I give you the history of Python and who came up with it, and it was Guido van Rossum. Again, Mark Zuckerberg is Facebook, Bill Gates is Microsoft, Elon Musk is Tesla, among other things. Question number 2, what is the typical data type for the number 4.2? So again, we learned last week that we had basically 4 basic data types. We had strings, integers, floats, and booleans, and the floats were basically the decimal numbers, okay, because we have a float, the decimal number can float either way. So this type is a float. Okay, strings usually are surrounded by single quotes or double quotes. Lists are one of the collection data types, so there are a group of items that are grouped together with square brackets, and integers are whole numbers, not a decimal. Okay, so a 4.2 is a float data type. Which of the following is a Python data type? Flask, didn't talk about that. Dictionary, we did. It's one of the collections along with list, so dictionary is, and Ruby and React are not data types. So the correct answer here would be dictionary. Question number 4, can the value and type of a variable in Python be changed after it's been created? The answer is yes, because we did prove that to be the case. So it's going to be one of those yeses. No is out of the question. Yes, the type of a variable can be changed, but not the value. Okay, that's not true. We can actually change both the type and the value. And then yes, both the value and type of variable of Python can be changed after it's created. Okay, that sounds correct. And yes, the value of variable can be changed, but not the type. Okay, that's not correct. So the correct answer is yes, we can change both the value of a variable as well as the type once it's created. Okay, remember we gave the example of the variable called age. Initially, age was of a value, say 50 or 51, with no double quotes, meaning that it's a integer type. And then we change the value of 51 to make it, I don't know, 52, and then surrounded by double quotes, and that made it a string type. So we changed the value of age, and we also changed the data type from integer to string. And last question is, what does it mean when we say Python is an interpreted language? Okay, so we also talked about interpreted languages versus compiled languages. So let's see what options we have here. Python code must be compiled before it's run. Okay, that's compiled, that's not interpreted. Python code must be translated to binary code before it can be understood. Okay, so that's kind of true. Python code is run line by line. Okay, that's very true. Python code can only be written in English. Okay, so the term interpreted then really ties to this one here. Python code is run line by line. So if you remember interpreted languages, or Python specifically, the interpreter starts from the very top. If it's a comment, it skips it. If it's a code line or a non-comment line, then it will basically execute it, and it executes it line by line. As it reads it, it executes. As it reads it, it executes it. So it's slower than a compiled file or a compiled application. Compiled applications, the entire code gets compiled into an exe file or some sort of an executable file, and then that file can be run on demand at any time. It doesn't have to be recompiled to run every single time. But with interpreted language, we have to read a line and then turn it into source code, turn it into binary code, and then execute it. Next line, do the same. Next line, do the same. So there's a lot of performance hit or overhead that has to happen. But again, there are some pros and cons, and that's the difference between interpreted and compiled. But again, the answer for this one would be Python code is run line by line, because we interpreted the line, or we interpreted the code line by line and executed it line by line. All right, so that was the quiz from last week. Quizzes, again, are a very good way to test your knowledge, and also they can help you to improve your grade. Again, they're extra credit. It's not going to hurt to try them out, and again, you get 2 attempts, and hopefully try to maximize them as much as you can. All right, let's go back now to the week 2. All right, now again, every single link, please open it up and read it, okay? So read the overview. Under assignment sections, we have a few of them as usual. The attendance check is, again, a school requirement. Make sure that you do take care of it. It's very quick. The onboarding discussion we started last week, so it's going to be due this week. It was a 2-week assignment. It's a discussion forum where you get to share, some information about yourself and interact with me and as well as your classmates. It's 20 points, and again, as a reminder, the first 10 points you earn if you just post your introduction, and then the other 10 points you will earn if you reply to at least one of your classmates. Or you can also reply to me if you like. All right, so that's one assignment. The other assignment, also due this Sunday, is mastering input, output, and formatting with Turtle Graphics. I'll go into that in just a moment. And then we have to also, another assignment is working with Visual Studio, where you have to download and install Visual Studio, and then just create a very simple 2-line Python file just to make sure that it runs and everything looks fine. So I will also demonstrate this for you. We have 2 extra credit quizzes for this week. Again, same routine. It's 0 points due on Sunday for both of them, and they are optional. But again, like I said, it's a good way for you to test your knowledge, and also a good way to improve your grade by getting some extra points. All right. Under resources, also we have a good link here that would open up. Sometimes you might get a video, you might get an article to read, or a lot of helpful resources. So please look into this link as well. The Q&A forum, just as always, it's an open public discussion forum. You can post your questions, you can post your comments. Just remember that this is a publicly accessible forum. If you do have a question that's of a more personal nature or something that pertains only to you, versus the entire class, then please either email me through the Canvas inbox, or you can also email me directly using my school email address of ndejani@rise.education. All right. Now, before I get into these 2 assignments, I wanted to basically go over some code examples where I'm going to show you some print statements and how to format the output, as well as go over the input function. So I'm going to start with the input function. All right, here's a quick and small file to talk about the input function in Python. I wanted to show you that there is actually a long version of typing up or using the input function. versus a more streamlined version. So the long version is basically to just do it on 2 lines, where you say print, we'll call the print function, and then pass it some sort of a prompt. Okay, so here I'm saying please enter something. So that's what is going to be printed on the console. And then I'm going to create a new variable called user underscore input underscore value, and I'm going to assign it whatever gets inputted by the user up here. Okay, so this took me 2 lines to do it, and the output is going to be, let's run this code. Here, I get a prompt for the user, please enter something, and I'm going to say hello, then hit enter, and then the program is concluded, and I'm back to the command line prompt. All right, so it's doable, but I did it in a long version using 2 lines of code. The more streamlined version is to combine basically both of these into 1 line of code. So instead of having a prompt on 1 line and then a variable that equals to the input function, I'm going to basically merge them together. So I'm going to have a variable name. I'm going to set it equal to the input function, but instead of having a blank input function like I did up here, I'm going to include the actual prompt in my input function as an argument. Okay, so this is the short version of using the input function. So I'm going to create 2 variables, one called first underscore name, and it's going to be an input function that prompts the user with please enter your first name. Whatever the user enters, they hit enter, then it's going to go on to the next line of code, which is another input function. This time is going to be called age, and I'm going to prompt the user with the text, please also share your age. All right, so let's run that, just confirm that it is running. Please enter your first name, let's say Nazar, age 51, enter, and then no more code to run, so we exit our code. Okay, now I wanted to demonstrate something that's quite interesting. You would think that because I entered a number for my age in my input function, basically here, I entered 51. So Nazar is a sequence of letters, so you would think that this is of type string, all right? While age is just a bunch of numbers or a couple of numbers, then it should be of the type integer. That's what we learned last week, right? But let's try that out. Let me do actually 2 print statements. Print, I'm going to get the type, because we learned about the type function last week. So type, first name. Okay, and let's, alright, so I'm going to print the type of first name, which I assume is going to be string, and let's also print the type age, which I assume is going to be integer. So let's run that, see what we get. I'm going to Nazar 51. Interesting. So for Nazar, I got the data type string, which is expected, but why am I getting a string for 51? The reason is because by default, the input returns a string data type. All right. So this is something by design. When Python was created, when the input function was designed in Python, whatever gets captured is a string data type. All right. Now, if I want 51 to be actually captured as a integer data type, then I need to come up here and convert this entire function with all its arguments using the int method, or the int function, I'm sorry. So int is yet another built-in function in Python that allows you to convert something, whatever it is that you pass it in the parentheses, into an integer data type. Okay, so now if I type 51, it's through the input function, it's not going to be seen by Python as a string data type, but it's going to be converted into an integer data type, so it's going to be an integer data type. All right, now I can do the same thing also. There's an str function that basically, as you guessed it, would convert a data type from something to string. All right, so if I run this now and enter Nazar 51 again, there we go. So Nazar is string, that hasn't changed, but now my 51, my age, has been converted to int. Now, why is this important to turn 51 into int? Well, because if you ever want to use it in mathematical form, it has to be of the data type integer. You cannot have a string of 51 and then add it to 5 and get an answer. If you're going to do math equations, the data type has to be integer or a float, depending on what you're doing exactly. Okay, so that's part of the reason why when we collect a number from a user, that we basically convert the input function into an integer data type. Okay, now this file is pretty much about print function and then formatting the output of the print function. So we talked about printing last week, but there is more to print function than what I covered last week. So basically I have two variables here. I have a name variable, which is assigned the value of Jack, and it's a string type because it's double quotes. And then I have an age variable, and it's equal to 50, so it's integer. Now in my print function, we saw that we can output a string, and then if I want to mix a variable with it, I can use what is called concatenation. So concatenation is when you concatenate, or when you consolidate, or when you add things together, combine them together. So I'm going to be showing you different ways of how this can happen. One way, well, we saw last week we can just use a comma, okay? But there's also concatenation, which uses the plus sign. So I'm going to say my string, I'm going to print out a string which says my name is, followed by a space, and then I'm going to concatenate the value of the variable name, and then I'm going to concatenate after that space and my age is space, and then I'm going to concatenate the value of the variable age, and then I'm going to concatenate a period. Okay, so that's what this is doing. This print function can, mix the string with a variable, and instead by using concatenation as opposed to using commas as we've seen last week. All right, but let's see what happens here when I run this code. All right, so I get an error, and the error basically says can only concatenate string, not int, to string. All right, so basically what this is saying is you can't combine, or you can't concatenate a string value to an integer value. You can only combine strings to strings. Okay, so that's one of the drawbacks of using concatenation, is if you want to concatenate, you have to concatenate the same data type. The one workaround is to basically, like we learned from the input function moments ago, is I can convert this, well, age is a data type integer, right, because it's equal to 50, and I cannot concatenate an integer to a string. All right, all these things are strings. This is a string because it's double quotes. This is a string data type because it's, again, double quotes. And then age is the only one that's kind of, standing out. It's an outlier. We cannot just combine an integer with everything that's string. So just like I converted the input in my input example into a integer, I can take an integer and now I can combine it, convert it to a string like that. So I call the str, which is short for string, I can call the string function, which is built into Python, and then I pass it the variable that I want to convert it to a string. So whatever the data type of age is going to be now converted to a string. So this age 50 in the background will now change to age 50 like this. All right, we're not going to see it, so let me undo it. But that's what the string method does, or the string function does. So now if I run this, again F5 for short, it runs without any errors. Okay, so that's one way of handling concatenation and specifically combining non-string values. Now this is what we saw last week. This example here, let me just get rid of that. So this is this example we saw last week. We basically saw that you can say a string and then comma, a variable, comma, and then go another string, and then all that. So if we run this, it also runs the same way exactly. Okay. Now actually there is an extra space here. Okay, so let's get rid of this. Now we don't need a space here because if you remember, the print function has an automatic or a default separator, which is a space. Okay, so I don't need to include a space here like I did here. All right, so the default separator is a space, so it gets added right away. So now if I run this, let me get rid of that. Let's run this again. All right, it runs fine, and now there is no extra space like I saw here. Okay, all right, let's go back here. Let me comment this out. Let me come down here, and uncomment this. Now, using the print function, the output can also be formatted. So if you notice here in my print function, before the double quotes starts, I have the letter F. Now, this is not a typo. So F is short for formatting, and this is, I think, starting in Python 2. Not sure if it's 8, but one of the Python versions. This was added. And down here, I'm going to show you some old formatting options that we used to use. But this is the de facto or the go-to type of formatting now. So you basically, inside your print function, but right before the double quotes, you include the F letter. And the F letter basically is going to tell the Python interpreter, hey, I want to format my output in a specific way. So this is a very simple way of doing or showing you the formatting options. So I have my name is, and then my variable is not separated by commas or not concatenated using the plus sign. It's just basically written out but surrounded by braces. Okay, so my name is name and my age is age. So you can see that this formatting option is cleaner, it's nicer, not a lot of commas that might confuse people, but and also just one single set of double quotes. Here I have to put double quotes, comma, variable, then double quotes, then variable, then double quotes. So it's a little bit confusing. Okay, so this is more streamlined. This is the new formatting option. Again, I'm not sure if it's Python 2.8, I'm sorry, 3.8 or which version of Python it was, but it's something new. And if I run this now, it works the same exact way. So basically, you take the variable name that was here, and when you surround it by braces, or squiggly brackets, some people call it, and append the or precede the double quotes, basically your string value, you precede it with the F letter, then the print function is going to understand that I'm going to format the string using the formatting option in Python. Okay, so I think this is much more cleaner. So it's one way to format your string using the F formatting style. Now, again, this is kind of a breakthrough. Again, I say breakthrough because when you start, or if you've been coding for a long time, or even if you're coding now, and then you see that language progressing from year to year to year, it basically, the progress is usually an improvement. So this is kind of new to us, or at least new to me. Not now, but in the last few years. But I used to code this way, okay, and this was not pleasant, but that's what was available to us. So let me comment this one out, and let me show you. The old way, we had a format called, or actually a method called .format. Now let me just uncomment all that. Here we go. So if you have a string, okay, so this is a string because it's surrounded in double quotes. When you have a string object can have multiple methods. Now, the word object and the word methods is something that we haven't learned about yet, but that's part of object-oriented programming. And we don't need to get into that discussion yet. We will later on. But basically, a string is an object, okay, or actually it's a class, and classes have methods. Methods are basically functions. So functions are exactly the same thing as methods. The only difference is if a function is a standalone function, meaning it doesn't belong to a class, then we call it function. But if a function belongs to a class, in this case the string class, then this function, we call it a method. Okay, that's kind of like a distinctive difference between them, but for now that's what it is. So format, again, it's a method because it acts like a function. It takes arguments, but it's also part of an object, so, or part of a class. So that class is a string. So I have this string. My name is fname. I'm age years old, and then I call the dot notation, so I can call the method called format. And now I have to define what fname is, and I have to also define what age is. So within the format arguments, I'm going to say, well, fname is equal to John, and age is equal to 36. So John is going to replace fname, and 36 is going to replace age. All right, so that's one way of doing it, is by calling the .format method of the string class. Another way to do it is also the .format method, but this time, instead of specifically giving it a name, I can just call it using index numbers. So index are zero based, meaning that we start from 0 and then the counting continues 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on. So 0 basically means this is the first variable, and then 1 is basically the second variable, and so on. So if I say my name is 0 index, I'm 1 index years old, and then I call the dot format method, then John is in the 0 index location and 36 is in the 1 index location. So 0 is going to fill this location and 36 is going to fill this location. All right, so when I run it, it should say my name is John, I'm 36 years old. All right, now if you don't want to control the index notations but you're sure that the order is going to be correct, then I can use this approach. I just say my name is Braces, I'm Braces. Okay, let's just keep it. So this means that this first item is going to go here, and then this one is going to go here. If I had a third squiggly braces, then I need to have a third item here, and so on. Okay, so this doesn't, this does specify that the order has to be exactly correct. This one specifies that the numbers have to match the numbers, meaning that this is the index location 0, so this is going to be this. This is index location 1, so it's going to be this. All right. Here, I don't specify index location numbers, but this is the first item, this is the second item, so this is going to be the first item, and this is going to be the second item. Okay, so let's run this for now, F5, and again, I get the same exact thing. All right. Now, if I go back to this example here, if I change this to 1 and then change this to 0, okay, then even though this is the first one, but it's index 1, so index 1 means it's the second item, which should be 36, and then this is index 0, which is technically the first item, that would be John. So this is going to say my name is 36, I'm John years old, just because I control the sequence using the index notation here. If I run this, there we go, my name is 36, I'm John years old. All right. So again, this is this technically still works. The dot format function still works and available, but again, the F formatting is much cleaner and leaner and streamlined. Okay. Now there's also another way of old formatting. Get rid of that. Let me bring this in, where we use the percentage sign or the modulus operator. Okay, we didn't talk about operators yet, but we will be talking probably next week. So this sign, this percentage sign called modulus, basically is a way of formatting, and there are different. Well, I guess if you look in the documentation, you're going to find that. For example, I'm using modulus S, which is for strings, but there's also modulus D, which is for digits or for basically numbers. All right, so there's more than just modulus S and modulus D. So if you just do a search in the Python documentation on formatting using modulus, it's going to give you a slew or a whole table of what you can or how you could format the different values using the modulus formatting option. So here all it is just, again, all within one double quotes. Your variables are going to be modulus S if it's a string, and then modulus D if it's a number. And then after the string value, you do the modulus character, and then within parentheses, you pass the variable names, which are defined up here. Okay, and then I'm going to print it out. So I put everything in a greeting variable, and then I'm going to print out the greeting variable. And so if I run this code now, F5, I get hello Jack, exclamation, you are 50 years old. All right. So again, this is just another way of how we used to do formatting. It still works today if you still want to use it, but again, there are more leaner and streamlined options to choose from. Okay, let me go back now to the week 2 material and specifically the 2 assignments. I'm going to cover this one first, so let's open that up. All right, so again, please read all the details in here, and basically what it's asking us to do is, again, we're going to be using a trinket to code this assignment, and if we scroll down here, we have some trinket code. And again, I don't expect you to understand all this. It's using the turtle library, which we haven't learned, but again, it's just an example. Right off the get-go, if we just click on run, I get an error. Okay, and the error basically says invalid literal for int with base 10, enter first number on line 28. So if I go to line 28, again, let's say I don't know what this means. So it says in this function we have int and then num1. So we kind of learned already that int is basically a built-in function in Python that allows you to convert some variable into an int data type. Okay, and this int data type basically has to do with this. Here's num1. So num1, again, it's saying here input from user. So it looks like we're going to be prompting the user for some value. And the instructions are basically saying, navigate to here, your task is to modify the following variables. We have to modify num1, operator, and num2. So these three guys here. How do we want to modify it? They're holding static strings. That's correct. They're hard-coded right now. Now your task is to replace these strings with user input functions so that the program will ask the user for these values when it is run. This will make your calculator dynamic and interactive. Okay, so basically it's asking us to, instead of hard-coding these values, it wants us to prompt the user for these values so the user enters them, and then it gets stored in these variable names. And we learned just the last few minutes that now I can call the input function and then pass the actual prompt as an argument, just like that. So num1 is going to be whatever I capture from this prompt, enter first number. So I'm going to do the same also for here. I'm going to wrap the hard-coded string into a input function and do the same here. Alright, so basically all I did was I just added, I wrapped the text in a input function. Okay, so now instead of hard coding the value, the code is going to prompt the user first to enter first number. I'm going to type it and then hit enter, and then I'm going to get prompted for enter operator. So an operator could be a plus, a minus, a multiplication, or a division, and then hit enter, and then I'm going to be prompted for enter a second number. So enter a number, some sort of an operator, then enter another number, and then whatever the operator is with these two numbers, it's going to do it the math function, and then it's going to return the answer. All right, and it should return it here. So if I run this now, again, that's all the change that's required, but let's confirm that that's true, that it works correctly. I'm going to do run. Okay, so enter first number. I'm being prompted now, so let's say 5, hit enter, and then enter operator, either plus, minus, times, or division. So let's do plus, then hit enter, and then enter second number. Let's do 3, hit enter. Since I didn't get any errors, then it looks like it worked. So I have 5, it's a blue 5, the operator is a plus, and it's a green color, the 3 is in a red color, and then equals 8, which is correct. All right, now I want you to do, or I want you to verify, because part of best programming practices is you have to unit test, or you have to basically test your code, make sure that it works in all different scenarios. So I tested the plus operator. Let's run it again. And I'm going to do also 5. Now I'm going to do the minus operator. I'm going to do 3 also. So 5 minus 3 is 2. That's correct. Now let's do it again, and let's do 5, and let's do multiplication, which is an asterisk, and then let's do 3 as well. So 5 times 3 is 15. That's correct. And then last but not least, let's do 5, enter, divided by enter. Let's do 3, enter, and I get also an answer. Okay, so all 4 scenarios work correctly. All right, now we didn't discuss this yet, but eventually we have to try to break our code. We have to see, well, as developers, you have to think as not as a bad user, but as a user that can make errors. Okay, so instead of typing, you know, well, here, let's try this. If I try to break the code, you know, I'll do A, and then I'll do K, and I'll do L. Okay, so I got an error. Now, in proper app dev or best programming practices, you always have to anticipate that a user, what he or she might do, and then you have to capture or basically anticipate the error and then handle it gracefully. And there are ways to do it. We just haven't discussed it yet. But again, this is kind of a introduction to what we will be discussing later, not today, but in another video, about handling errors and how to anticipate errors and how to gracefully handle it so we never have to get these ugly red messages again. Okay, so now that you modified the code and you've tested the code and everything works correctly, what you need to do is with every single attempt, please take a screenshot. Okay, so again, if I run this again, and I do 5, and I do plus, and I do 3, okay, basically take a screenshot of this that shows that you've run it successfully using the plus sign. And also on the left side, please, show that you've modified these 3 variables, okay, and then take a screenshot of this. All right, and then rerun the code and then do it with a minus sign. And then when it runs correctly, take another screenshot. Okay, so in all, you're going to be having 4 screenshots. So that's why you need to submit these 4 screenshots. Now you could submit them as 4 separate files, or if you want to make life easier for me, and I do ask you to please do it this way, is that just open up a Word document and then paste all the 4 screenshots into just one Word document. So I could just open one Word document and then see all of them together. Okay, if you're having a hard time doing that, that's okay. Do send me just the 4 screenshots as 4 separate files. But if you can, if you want to help me, please just paste all your 4 screenshots into one Word document. All right, so that's pretty much it for this assignment. And now let's move on to the next assignment. So the next assignment is about Visual Studio. If I open that up. All right, again, read everything, please. But for the steps, it basically says that we have to download and install VS Code. Gives us the link, so let's follow that link. And while it opens, we need to set up VS Code. We need to create a new Python file, and then just in the Python file, we need to add these 2 lines of code. We need to run it, and when it runs successfully, we need to take a screenshot of the VS Code interface, showing that the script has run in the terminal, and then submit that screenshot to the assignment. All right, so it's kind of straightforward. So here is the download website that you can download VS Code. Again, remember, VS Code is blue icon, but Visual Studio from Microsoft also is a purple icon. They both look the same, but just so you know that you're on the right page. Now, choose which version you want to install, Windows or Linux or Mac. I'm on a Mac, so I clicked on Mac and I already downloaded it. So once the file has downloaded, open it up. Here it is. And when you first open up Visual Studio, you get the welcome screen. Now, I already installed Visual Studio, so you might get a different looking screen where it's going to ask you to set up the environment. But again, it's a simple walkthrough of maybe 1 or 2 screens, and you can also skip it if you like. But this is what opens up. This is Visual Studio. That's the interface. And for example, I can customize this view right away because I don't like the black background. So one way I can do this is by going to the settings and then go to settings. And then go to workbench and then appearance. And then here I can change the color theme to be one of those. So I'm going to go with light, or I can go light modern. Now I get this looking white background, which is what I like. Okay, but you can also make changes to, for example, in the text editor, you can change the font size, change it to something bigger or smaller. It's up to you, but you have full control over the settings. All right, now this is the interface. Okay, on the left we have some icons. Here we have some tabs for any pages that we open. All right, and then we can close them by clicking on the X. Up here we can view different parts of the interface, and I'll show you that in just a moment. So let's say we want to create a new file, okay, because that's what the assignment is asking us. I didn't install Python or anything yet, through Visual Studio, because Visual Studio is not just a Python editor. You can write different types of code, programming languages with it. All right, so I'm going to do new file, and select the file type. I'm just going to make it. Well, I'm going to click on new file, And so now I have an empty file. Or you can also go up to File and then New File, and then click here, New File as well. All right. Now the assignment, let me go back to the assignment. It's asking us to create these two lines of code. So print, my name is John Doe, and then print, fun fact, I love learning about artificial intelligence. All right, so here I'm going to do print. Now, so far, no one knows that this is Python or what kind of language, and even down here, it just says plain text. Okay, so print, my name is John Doe, close parentheses, and another print statement, and I'm going to say, what did it say? Fun fact, I love learning about, oh, here, let's see if I could just copy and paste that, and paste. All right, now, so let's file, and then let's save it. Now I'm going to save it as a, I'll save it as anything. I'm just going to say week2.py. That's 2test.py. All right. Now down here, you notice that it's a Python file because I named the file with .py extension, and then this popped up because that's the first time, for example, you use Python. So it says, do you want to install the recommended Python extension from Microsoft for the Python language? So do say yes, install it, because we need that language and we need all the support we can get with Python for VS Code. So I'm going to click on install, and notice what's going to happen now. It took me to, remember these icons here on the left? The last one is called extensions. Okay, now extensions basically is just that. Just like in a, if you remember when you use web browsers, you can add extensions to your web browser, which basically adds functionality and features to your browser. All right, these are third-party snippets or little applications that enhance the functionality of your application. Okay, so in extensions, we have a lot of different extensions. These are third-party tools that have been written for VS Code, and this one is a Python extension from Microsoft. Here, this is the rating by how many people. This is how many times it's been downloaded. So this has been downloaded 122 million times. Okay, and you can download it from the internet. Now, a word to the wise. Again, these are third-party products. Okay, so just make sure that the rating is high. Again, 589 is, I always like to see something in the thousands, not just, 589 ratings. But the fact that it's been downloaded so many times, that's comforting. You always have to check, who is the provider or the developer or the publisher of this third-party extension. Read all about it first. Okay, make sure that this is the extension that you want. But again, if you know that this is the extension you want, you don't have to verify it. You already know that it's good to use. So now it's been installed, okay, and you can uninstall it if you want. That's just an easy button. If you want to look at more extensions, you can click on the extension tab, and well, actually click on it. And right now it's only showing me this one. So if I erase it, or actually if I just clear it, okay, then it's going to. Okay, so the installed ones are here, but then now it loaded so many other extensions for me that you can play around with. Okay, if you want something that's just specifically for Python, then you can just type Python in the search, and then it's going to return anything that's Python related. Okay, so these are all different extensions that have to do with Python. So again, just make sure that you read each one of them, see how many times they've been downloaded, what's the star rating. Some of them have been crossed out. Let's see if I can show you an example. Alright, I can't find an example now, but sometimes you will find an extension that has been crossed out. So that usually means it's been no longer supported and no longer available. So, that's just a little bit of piece of information. Okay, so back to this interface again. This left navigation bar, and then this is the major editing part, because you can see up here we have different tabs. Okay, and just like in like in a web browser, you have different tabs. You can also have tabs here. To close something, you just click on the X. All right, close that. All right, so now we're back to the code file that I just created. Now to run this, there are a couple of ways. And if I right click on it and then say run Python, the assignment says to say run Python in file in terminal. Okay, so I'm going to click that. Now what this is going to do is it's going to open up a little section at the bottom here. That's the terminal for me. So I already got an error. It says unterminated string literal detected line 2. So line 2 here, we already get a squiggly bracket, or not a squiggly bracket, but this little red line, just kind of like in Microsoft Word, where you have a grammar error or you have a spelling error, you get these little characters. So I have a double. There we go. All right. Now if I run this, I can now run it by clicking on this play button, or again I can right click and then say run Python here. Okay, so let's try this play button. Now down here in my terminal it run. Okay, now actually let me show you this. In the top right corner I have these icons that allow me to modify the view. So as you can see here, this is a toggle for the primary sidebar. So this is the primary sidebar. If you don't want to see this right now, you do see it because it's black. If I click on it, then it becomes white, and now it's been hidden. Okay, if I'm going to bring it back, just click on it, now it shows up. Okay, down here this basically says this is a toggle panel also for this lower part, because again you can see where, you know, how the icon looks. So I click on it, then the lower part disappeared. If I want to show it again, then click on it and it shows up. Same thing with the right panel. Okay, nothing to show right now. And then also you can customize it if you want. You can choose the layout as you wish, what you want to include, what you don't want to include. Okay, I'm going to escape out of it. All right, now down here there are a few other tabs. Problems is, I'm not sure if you paid attention, but when I had this error here, okay, next to problems it had a 1. Okay, so if I'm here and you know, I didn't pay attention to the error, but if I look on the left side, I see problems is 1. Basically, when you click on it, it's going to tell you exactly what the error is. Okay, it's going to tell you the line number and the column. Okay, so once you fix it, problems are gone. Okay, now this is very helpful, specifically if you, again, this is a 2-line file, but if you're working with code that's, you know, thousands of lines long, then it would be nice to see all of them right here. And also when you you know, when you have an error, and let's bring this back, all you have to do is just double click on it, and it's gonna take you right to this to where the error is. Okay, so I mean, right now I'm here. Let's double click here. See, the cursor switched from up here to exactly where the error is. Okay, so that's a very nice and nifty tool. Terminal is where your code will be displayed. Debug is something we're going to be talking about in a future week. Ports is if you want to, I think, connect to an outside machine, or have an outside machine connect to you. And down here on the bottom right, it tells you which version of Python you're running. So right now it's 3.12.2, but if you want to change it, you can click on it, and then it opens up the different Pythons that are installed on your computer, and you can choose which one you want to use, you know, to run your code. All right, I'm going to escape out of that. All right, let's fix this one more time. All right, and then we're going to run it. Play button, and we verify that it runs. My name is John Doe. Fun fact, I love learning about artificial intelligence. Okay, also on the left side here, again, this is Explorer. This is the File Explorer. So if you have a folder open, or if you have an entire project open, you're going to find all your folders and files here. You can search if you want also. That's an editing searching tool. Source control. Source control is basically, it's a way to control your source. Source meaning your code files. And it's a way for version controlling as well. So what is that, and why is that important? Well, normally if you're working on code, you don't want to save it to your local computer because, you know, God forbid your computer gets stolen or destroyed, or your hard drive is not readable anymore, and all your hard work is not accessible and is lost. Okay, so you need to store your code somewhere on the cloud, or somewhere in a repository that is backed up, that's secure. Other words, not your local computer. Okay, so source control basically gives you a repository to do that, but not just as a storage repository, but also every time you work on your code, you make changes, the code gets a new version. So say, I wrote this code, okay, and I'm happy with it. I check it into my repository, and it gets version number 0. And then the next day, I work more on my code, so I check out the file, I do changes, I'm happy with it, I save it, and then I upload it back, or I check it into my repository again. So now I have a file that has 2 versions, version 0, with changes I did yesterday, and then version 1, which changes I did today. This is very important because, again, God forbid you publish version 1 and somehow it breaks or doesn't play well with the rest of your code, and it's a disaster and it's a production application, then you need to reverse your code back to version 1. And you can do that very, very quickly once you have source control set up and it's part of your continuous development, continuous integration type environment for your application. Okay, so that's where the IDE part comes in with VS Code. It's an integrated development environment. It's not just you write code, but you can do, again, source control. You can do extensions. You can do testing. You can do so many things with it. And speaking of testing, this is the testing beaker, and here you can create testing scenarios. Again, that's a little bit more detailed than what we want to cover for an intro to VS Code, but this is the assignment. This is VS Code. Again, download it, install it, open it up, configure it for Python like we did, create a new file, call it anything you want, make sure it's a .py extension, write the code just like the assignment says, and then basically run it and confirm that you get this output, and then take a screenshot of this whole page that shows the code and shows the output with no errors, and then submit this screenshot to the assignment area. All right, so that's pretty much it. This wraps up the week 2. Again, if you have any questions, I know I covered a lot, different topics, different skills, different tools, so it can be confusing. You're more than welcome to watch this video over and over again. And of course, if you do want to reach out to me, please reach out at any time. Email is the best way to go, or the Q&A forum, or the Canvas inbox, of course. So thank you for watching. I look forward to working with you, and have a nice week. Take care, and bye for now.